what are your strengths and what are your weak spots? And again, if there's something missing on the desired list, it's not necessarily a weak spot. It just means that you don't have 100% of what they need. And that's totally okay. So you have an interview coming up, and all you have to prepare is just 30 minutes. You feel like this is going to be a disaster because the pressure's on, but the reality is you can do this. In only 30 minutes, you can prepare for an interview. Now, I'm going to be really honest with you. This is assuming that you are not going in cold, you're not super rusty. If you haven't had an interview in 7 years, 5 years, 8 years, then you and I need to really talk because we've got to get all your communication system and your communications package in place. However, if you've already been to at least one interview, you're kind of back in the game, you've got your career story written out, then absolutely, we can get ready for that interview in just 30 minutes. So, in the next several minutes here in our conversation, I'm going to walk you through a 5 step, we'll call it a power prep, that's going to fit right into that 30-minute slot that you have. Now, for each step, I'm going to give you a bit of a time limit because I know that for me, that works really well. If I don't put my little, 5-minute timer on the table and hear it ticking, I am going to get into the weeds and never come out of the forest, which means that 30 minutes later, my time is up and I was just looking at the posting for about 30 minutes. Okay. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to walk you through the different 5 steps, and then I'm going to tell you how long each should take. And you're welcome to use a timer just to make sure that we stay high level on this, which means that we are going to pick up the most impactful pieces and not worry about the details because those will come later. All right, so step 1, you're going to take about 7 minutes to work on setting the tone. And you're going to set the tone of your interview through your Tell Me About Yourself response. Now, if you are interested in learning more about your Tell Me About Yourself response, and if you're just joining me today, then you might want to go a couple episodes back because I'm going to link them in the description. But I've got an episode just a couple of weeks back on how to strategize your Tell Me About Yourself response and then also how to structure it. But again, in a perfect world, you would already have this because this is not your first rodeo. You've actually interviewed in the recent past. All right, so take about 7 minutes. What you're going to do is look at your Tell Me About Yourself response and find your red thread, which means take a look at the job posting and then determine which of your career milestones do you want to focus on. Which career milestones specifically talk to the growth, the leadership, or the results that this particular posting cares about. So basically, taking literally 3 minutes, maybe 4 at the most, and you're just saying, you're looking at your career story and you're just saying this milestone, this milestone, this milestone, this milestone. Boom, done. Then you'll take another minute or two to jot down why here, why now, why then. So basically, this is the part that most people miss when they share their Tell Me About Themselves response. You share a lot and you're like, yes, here's what I did. Look how awesome I am. And period. Right. But at the end, you want to let them know that this is not just another job you sent an application in for. This is a job you've been looking forward to. You've been researching. You're basically committed and invested. So make sure you write down, like literally with a pen and a piece of paper, because writing it down is going to help internalize it. And it's one of the fastest ways to do it. If you look at something, do you remember like back in the day, you had to take a math test in class, right? You go read, open your textbook and you flip through the pages and you're like, yeah, this algebra or this calculus looks familiar. And then you go in the test and totally bomb it. It's because there's a really big difference between recognizing something that's already on a piece of paper and actually having it internalized to where you know it and can, I don't want to say regurgitate, that's such a terrible word, but you know what I mean, right? Recall, that's what I meant, recall. You can recall it and put it on your paper. That's why you want to make sure and write these things down. So you're going to write down why this role, why now, why this company. Now, it's very possible that at the end of those few things, you're going to have a little bit of time left. Let's say you have 2-3 minutes left. Guess what you do with those 2-3 minutes? You do the exact same thing. Instead of having the words come out of your pen from you writing them, you're actually going to have them come out of your mouth from you saying it. So you want to say this out loud, even if it's a whisper, even if you're just mouthing it. It's important that you go through that process of actually articulating the exact words you would say for your Tell Me About Yourself response and your why this, why now, why them, because that is going to help you to remember it and then recall again later. Okay, so we're now at 7 minutes. Step two is going to take only about 5 minutes, and you want to take those 5 minutes to get brutally honest, but also kind of pat yourself on the back. So you're going to look at the job description and then either circle or highlight, or again, even better, write down 2 to 3 strengths that you want them to remember you by. What are the strengths that really make you an ideal candidate for their particular role? And look for any gaps. Is there a gap or a weak spot? And remember that not having every single thing on their desired list when you already have most, if not everything, on their required list does not mean you have a gap. I like to think of it as everything on their desired list, so not the required list, but the desired list is actually an added value. It's a bonus because you'll notice sometimes those are really specific. And I do think there are times when the market is so tight that you should have all of the required and all of the desired, particularly if you're looking at like these huge companies, right? Okay. So take a look and figure out what are your strengths and what are your weak spots. And again, if there's something missing on the desired list, it's not necessarily a weak spot. It just means that you don't have 100% of what they need. And that's totally okay. So know your strengths, know your gaps. Go ahead and write down your top 2 to 3 strengths. And if there is any gaps at all, go ahead and jot that down just so you know it and you can strategize in this next section. So that should take about 5 minutes. I wouldn't take any more than 5 minutes. We're thinking really big picture here. We're not getting into the details and the weeds. All right, step three is to take 7 minutes. Okay, I'm going to give you 7 minutes for this one. And that is to align your strengths to their top three needs. And so in the last step, we looked at what are your strengths and what are your gaps. But now it's like, okay, how do we line our strengths to their needs? And so right now, what we're doing is we are getting really strategic, figuring out what are their top three priorities and what are the stories that I want to share. So maybe I should have started that way. It's your stories that we're talking about here. So find out your three stories that make you most competitive for this position. Basically, which three stories are A, most compelling, meaning you have the best outcome, but also B, and probably more importantly, are the most relevant to their most important needs. And sometimes you can find this in the requirements, but I would encourage you to pay attention to the description itself. So before the requirements, there's usually like duties and responsibilities, which is fine. But then sometimes even before that, there's a section that talks about, is this a new department? Are they scaling? Kind of what are they envisioning? Sometimes you see those sections in job postings. And so that's really where you want to look at and try to read between the lines and understand what are they trying to do and how can I show that I have done that before? So, for example, you could talk about a time that you led a really tough project or that you improved a system or operationalized a system, or you saved a deadline, saved in cost, same in time, right? Whatever matches what they're actually hiring for. And your goal here is not to cover your entire resume. Your goal is to figure out what is the deepest value and then to focus in on that. And so at this point, let's say you've taken about 7 minutes for your career stories. At this point, we're looking at, let's see, I'm scrolling here. We're at 12. We're right around 19 minutes. And so let's take the next 5 minutes for step four. So reset that timer with another 5 minutes. And now we're going to reframe the gaps. We just covered our strengths. Now we're going to focus on our gaps. All right. So 5 minutes and 5 minutes only we get to focus on these gaps because you know that your mind can just swirl around on the one thing that we're missing when in reality we have so much value that we can focus on. So in this section, you want to ask for my one or two gaps that I have, what is the closest experience that I have? You can also ask, what do I have instead that can either surprise them with value or that can help them realize that you can pick up that gap, that part of the experience really, really quickly? So you might say something like, okay, maybe they're asking for global team management. And instead, you can make sure that you have a statement ready, something like, I've led cross functional teams across multiple regions and time zones and multiple cultures. So you can talk, and even if, like, let's say they're looking for global and you've really only had experience with like the US, Canada, and I don't know, Mexico. You can talk about even just those experiences. What if you've only worked in the United States? You can talk about the culture in California versus Texas versus Idaho versus New York, right? So figure out what is the closest experience you have and make sure that is one of your stories so that your stories not only cover your strengths, but they also cover your gaps. At the end of the day, you are not dodging any kind of gap. Don't feel like you're trying to make up something that's not there. You're actually showing them that you have adjacent skill sets and that you are ready to stretch into that next skill set. All right, so now we're at what, 24 minutes. So we have 6 minutes. So let's spend our very last 6 minutes asking really good questions. And a really good question does a couple different things. It's not just a chance to get information from them, it's also a chance to give them information, even if it's not in words. So let me clarify this because this can get sometimes a little bit confusing. So you're sharing information with them when you ask a question. Because if you did your research, you ask better questions. If you're truly curious, it comes across and people can sense that you're genuinely invested in getting to know more about this organization. And so, those pieces, even though you're not actually saying the words out loud, I am committed, I am invested, and I have done my due diligence to get information to therefore ask deeper questions. You're not saying that, but that is still being communicated. So, use your last 6 minutes really, really wisely. Hop onto their LinkedIn page, their company website, or any recent articles they either wrote or were written about them, and look for things that resonate. Okay, so I'm going to say the words shared value, mutual connection, common ground, recent news. Those words are what you're looking for, but it could still feel a little bit cold. So, this is usually how I help clients to do this. I'll say, I need you to go through their website and find a real reason why you actually want to work there. If you can find zero reasons why you are excited to work there, this might not be the right place for you. So go through their website, read through their materials, read on LinkedIn. What is it that resonates with you that you feel like, okay, that would be pretty cool to work here? You want to find something that actually gets you a little bit excited, that kind of brings a little bit of life out of you. That's what you want to go after. And from that, you're going to put together two or maybe even three questions that are genuine, that are thoughtful, and that are looking to the future. So when you're asking these questions, there's a couple different things that are helpful. I'm just going to run through these really quickly. One of the things that are helpful to communicate. Again, you're not actually communicating this by saying the words, I am committed, I am interested, but overall, you want the feel of the questions to communicate. Like I said, I'm committed. So I'm committed, I'm invested, I'm interested, right? All of those really are in the same camp. I like you. I genuinely want to work here. The second thing you want to communicate with your questions is I am proactive, meaning I did research ahead of time. I've been putting in the work to really understand what you do. So you're not waiting to be given direction, but you are proactive to take action and then ask when you need to fill the gaps in your knowledge with what you don't have access to. That's the second thing you're going to say. And the third thing that asking questions is going to communicate, and this is good for them, but it's also good for you, is when you ask real questions about the work being done, it communicates that you're actually interested in solving the problem. So you are the person who is going to figure out how to solve the problem. You're a curious person, you're a natural problem solver. That's what you want to communicate. And that's how you can ask questions about their biggest challenge. And that bonus is going to help you not only to make a good impression in that interview, but also to make a better impression when you go back for the next interview. And now you're bringing up thoughts about the challenges they had talked about previously. Okay, so all that to say, you're going to spend 6 minutes figuring out what are the best questions you can ask. And the best questions come up organically. So start looking through their information, spend more time on that to find genuine, real questions. And sometimes we could spend time like trying to figure out what question is going to make me sound the best, right? And that can lead to a lot of overanalysis. And so the best thing to do is head over, read more about them, and something's going to grab. Something's going to connect with you, and then you'll genuinely have a question that you can ask. And that's a good way of moving forward with that. All right. Your 30 minutes, in theory, at this point would be up. That is your 30-minute power prep. Now, I know that you and I have been talking here for about 20 minutes, but hopefully you're in your car or you are doing some chores around the house. And so this will come in handy when you actually have that 30-minute power prep. At this point, you would have focused on what really matters, which is setting the tone with your tell me about yourself story, thinking strategically about your strengths and your gaps and how to reframe those gaps, and also how to end the interview really well with some insightful and proactive questions. This is a kind of preparation that doesn't take a long time, but does leave you with a lot of impact. Now, listen, if this really quick reset helped you out, imagine what you and I could do if we had an entire job search strategy from beginning, which is your branding, all the way to end, which is your onboarding in that 30, 60, and 90 days. So, not just through the offer, all the way through onboarding. If you're looking to take a full career transition, then you and I might need to have a conversation. So, if that's you, go ahead and grab the link in the description. You can head over and schedule a conversation with me, and we can talk about what that would look like. Now, remember that you've got this. You've done the work to prepare your tell me about yourself response and all of your interview career stories and whatnot. And now, yes, you only have 30 minutes, but you can use those really strategically to get into the interview room and knock their socks off. All right. No matter what, know that we're cheering you on, we're praying for you, and we'll see you on the next one. Hey, thanks for listening. Now, you probably still have some more time in your commute or as you're doing some chores around the house. And so, what you can do instead of waiting a whole week for the next episode of the Incoming Career Podcast is to head over to Career 101 Podcast. And there, Portia and I had a conversation on episode 108 specifically about career decision making. So, if you're curious about how to make sure that you make the right career decisions and to avoid the pitfalls, then head over. That is Career 101 Podcast, episode 108 on career decision making. And stick around because Portia also interviews other professionals and she always asks really good questions. So it makes for good conversation. All right. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you on the next one.